Samson Agwehi stood on the balcony of his rented Lagos apartment, looking out over the sprawl of the city. At 22, he felt the future thrumming in his hands, fueled by the hum of his laptop and the speed of digital commerce. He wasn't like his father, who had clung to farming, or his uncles, whose petty businesses had withered on the vine. Samson was the golden boy, the tech entrepreneur, determined to break the mold. Beside him, David, his lifelong friend and quiet partner, often voiced a steady anxiety. Go slow, Samson. The market is a beast, and you are charging at it with only a screen for a shield. Samson just laughed, pulling Amora closer. She was his perfect future, a successful architect, dressed in vibrant modern prints, her eyes full of the promise of a Lagos wedding. Their life would be secure, modern, and free from the dusty shadows of the past. But the past was inescapable. Back in Ibadan, Samson's mother, Esther, kept vigil. In her simple home hung the fading photograph of her father, his face split by pride, holding up the single, massive yam that marked the family's brief, generational prosperity. It was called the first harvest, and it had been the last. Every business, every investment, every crop since then had failed. Esther knew the reason, a heavy secret passed down from the elders: the ancestral land was cursed. An ancient misdeed had tied the family's fate to 7 cycles of success shattered at the peak of fruition. The elders in the market courtyards, their faces aged like carved wood, whispered the same warnings. They saw the restlessness in Samson's eyes. The Ojobie market, the heart of the city's difficult reality, was a daily reminder of how easy it was to lose everything. Ignoring the warnings, Samson focused his ambition on a single, vital piece of property: the ancestral land itself. It was currently fallow, overgrown, and legally contested, but buying it back and turning it into a commercial success would be his ultimate act of defiance. Samson's first venture, Electra Hub, began with a flash of promise and ended with a flash of fire. One hot afternoon, the interior of the shop became a horrifying mess of melted plastic and fused metal. The sign, Electra Hub, was destroyed. Insurance declared the electrical fault inexplicable. He pivoted, pouring his remaining capital into a modern poultry farm. He built the pens quickly, ignoring the local farmers who predicted doom. The cause, however, was impartial to industry. A sudden, torrential thunderstorm brought floodwaters that breached the pens. Samson found himself kneeling in thick mud, the bodies of diseased chickens scattered around him, his face turned up to the rain, utterly defeated. The failure cost him everything, including Amara. Looking heartbroken but determined, she met him on the dusty border between the city and the farm and handed back her simple gold promise ring. The life they had planned, symbolized by the wedding dress hanging pristine in the Lagos apartment, was gone. The cause was a silent, razor-sharp blade. It wasn't just bad luck, it was a cosmic pattern. An abstract vision of a golden, ornate clock face shattering into thousands of pieces at exactly the number 7 played out in his mind, confirming the ancestral prophecy. The final blow came at the bank. His relative, a colleague named Femi who had long been jealous of Samson's quick rise, stood smirking as the stern manager handed Samson his dismissal letter. The last safety net was gone. Broken and adrift, Samson returned to Esther in Ibadan. In the low light of her sitting room, Esther finally broke. Embracing her son, her face etched with ancestral fear, she whispered the true, heavy secret of the curse. It would haunt their lineage until a sacrifice was made, not of blood, but of the very success they craved. Samson walked away from the city that day, alone, clutching a small bundle of cash, the last of his savings. His ambition was replaced by a hollow exhaustion. He was walking toward an unknown future, guided only by a devastating secret and a flicker of desperate hope. With nothing left to lose, Samson decided to face the curse head-on. He found Papa Obi, a formidable healer with piercing, ancient eyes, who agreed to help. In a dark, ceremonial hut, Samson stood defiant, confronting the ancient, shadowy force the healer summoned from the earth. Papa Obi drew protective symbols in chalk, confirming that the curse was real and required a final, definitive payment. Samson used his remaining strength and tech skills to launch a frantic crowdfunding campaign. Surrounded by empty coffee cups and fueled by sleepless nights, he typed relentlessly, pouring his story and his dream into the digital ether. The goal: to buy back the ancestral land, harvest glory, and build a vocational school on it, a place dedicated to teaching skills that could not be taken away. He succeeded. The money came in, just enough. Samson walked into the lawyer's office and signed the legal document detailing the massive land purchase. His signature was bold at the bottom, and a single drop of sweat, or perhaps the blood of his effort, touched the paper. The land was secured. It was the peak of his career. On a high balcony, bathed in golden, victorious lighting, Samson and David embraced, shouting in relief. They had done it. They had bought the land, secured the future, and redeemed the family name. Then, the clock struck 7. In that fatal moment, with his hand outstretched on the balcony railing, Samson collapsed. David reached for him, but it was too late. The curse had claimed its ultimate prize at the precise moment of his greatest triumph. Samson's death at 23 was reported in the local newspaper. Young entrepreneur dies, funds donated to school. His legacy was immediately public. Overcome with grief, David stood at the construction site a year later, resolute and successful in his own right, bearing the full weight of his friend's memory. He would complete the dream. Meanwhile, Esther, heartbroken but accepting, placed a single, white flower on Samson's fresh grave in the red earth of the village cemetery. Years passed. On the formerly cursed land stood the magnificent Samson David Memorial Institute. Students now bustled in and out of the grand arching entrance. Inside, young Nigerians focused on welding and carpentry, their faces illuminated by desk lamps and the promise of a future built with their own hands. Esther was now an elderly woman, but she found peace in tending a small, thriving vegetable patch in the school grounds. She had watched the yam and corn flourish, marking the first successful harvest the family had enjoyed in generations. The curse was broken. Even Madam Comfort, the elder whose family had perpetuated the curse, sat quietly side by side, watching the children learn. The ancestral feud was settled through mutual sacrifice and shared hope. David, now a pillar of the community, held his newborn son, Ugochukwu, meaning God's great gift, in a modern hospital room. The baby represented the new generation, unburdened and free. David had also restored Samson's first failed venture, the Electra Hub, which was now a bustling, thriving electronics shop. Years later, David and a 7-year-old Ugochukwu stood on the school grounds. Ugochukwu pointed excitedly at a massive, healthy yam plant growing in the fertile ground. The Harvest Glory farm was finally living up to its name. The ancestral land, once marked by ruin and death, was now green and flourishing, the Memorial Institute visible in the distance under a vast, open, peaceful sky. Samson's sacrifice had redeemed his lineage, and the price of harvest was paid forever.
Thanks for watching. The end.